Hello. So hopefully you're all having a really nice time here today. I'm really pleased to hear the phrase brand is back in a lot of talks. It's something that I'm going to talk about quite a lot today. But we are going to, first of all, address an elephant or a goldfish in the room. There's been a rumour circulating, not necessarily just within marketing, but kind of us as a human species, that our attention spans are shrinking by the minute. And we're just kind of gormlessly scrolling through our phones, scrolling through all of this content and not really absorbing anything. I think that's wrong because we're able to binge Netflix series. I sat through Oppenheimer. So actually, I don't think our attention spans are shrinking. I just think that as consumers in particular, we're just becoming a lot more aware of what we like, what we don't like, and what content we find valuable, and what we're willing to actually pay attention to. So hopefully you can all pay attention for the next 20 minutes. So what does that mean for social then? Because I'd like to think that a lot of the social guys in the room here talk a lot about attention, about capturing attention, keeping attention. We have frameworks like ADA, we talk about hooks when it comes to creative, and it's all about capturing attention really quickly within that first 3 seconds and then getting people to engage on a more longer term basis. And that's great if the people that you're targeting or the people that are seeing your ads are in the market for what it is that you're selling. So if they're sat at the bottom of the funnel and they see an ad that captures their attention and they're in the market, that's great. But what happens when you've exhausted all of those people that are already in the market to buying your product? So all of the fish in your pond you've caught, you now have an empty pond. So how do you then encourage more fish to start swimming in your pond? We know as marketers that generally people hate ads. I'm sorry to say, I'm not particularly big fan of ads. But people love content, and it's why TikTok as a platform seems to have worked really well in its kind of infant stage of advertising, because a lot of the content that we see is very much native to all of the other content that people see on the platform. So what happens when your core audience are already customers? Well, you can't keep selling more to the same people. My colleague Andy in the audience says that to pretty much every client that we talk to. You can't keep selling more and more and more to the same people. We need to broaden our horizons. And then you have to think about what makes you different from that sea of creative that we're seeing all the time from all of these different advertisers. A lot of ads I see look like this. And kudos to any of the brands if you're from that brand, because I've purchased from all of these. These have come from my Instagram feed. And there's actually nothing wrong with these ads. I'm not saying that they're bad. They worked because I bought from them. But in 6 months' time, am I going to remember many of these? Probably not. So if we took the trainer brand as an example, I'm an avid runner, so I'm always in the market for new running trainers. So if I saw that ad, I would click through. But what if I've never run a mile in my life and I have no intention of running? I'm going to see that ad and I'm not really going to remember. And then in 6 months' time, when the doctor tells me my cholesterol's too high and I should probably start doing some exercise, I'll think, oh, maybe I'll buy a pair of running trainers. Am I going to buy it from Pro Direct Running? Probably not, because this ad isn't memorable enough. I'm going to go to Nike, I'm going to go to Adidas, I'll go to Sports Direct, all of those big name brands. So a drumming gorilla and a Venus flytrap walk into a bar. I really hope some of you will understand these references. The drumming gorilla obviously being possibly one of the most memorable TV ad campaigns that we've ever seen in the UK. It's the 2006 Cadbury's ad campaign with that gorilla playing Phil Collins on the drums. The Venus flytrap being the 2023 John Lewis ad for Christmas, where a little boy wants to decorate his Venus flytrap instead of his Christmas tree. Neither have anything to do with product. You know, the gorilla's not telling you how many calories is in a bar of chocolate. Cadbury don't sell gorillas or drum kits. They sell chocolate. So what is it about TV advertising and these campaigns in particular that make it really memorable? Well, they lead with some kind of story. They have some kind of emotional through line, or they're just so kind of bonkers that they kind of ingrain themselves into our memories. And stories are really important because as a species, we're biologically designed to tell and remember stories. It's how we have history, it's how our culture develops, whether that's generations telling stories to their kids around a campfire, could be a historian writing a book about a notable figure, cave paintings, hieroglyphics, tapestries, artwork, all of it tells a story and all of it's really memorable. It's just how we've kind of evolved. So we have these two things. We have the need to capture and keep attention on a long-term basis, and we have the knowledge to know that as a human race, we can remember stories over facts. But as marketers, I feel like digital marketers, we've kind of lost that place where we're bringing the two things together. And we've got to a point within performance marketing where we're like, we just need people to convert all the time. Like, we're selling this and we need people to buy it now. And that's an exhaustive method of selling. You're going to reach a ceiling, it's going to be finite, and then you'll start seeing all of those metrics slowly diminish into nothing, which is not where we want to be. So TV ads in general will pull from these three pillars. And I will give an example. So Heinz released a TV ad campaign, I believe it was in 2012 in South America, where it was about this disjointed family. So the family hadn't seen each other for a really long time. It was kind of, there was tension within all of these different fragments. And one person in the family decided to organize a barbecue and invited all of these different parts of the family. When each part of the family arrived, they all brought with them a bottle of Heinz. And then the sauce brought them all together. And they all started then talking, and it kind of reunited them. The character there being the family. The emotion is an interesting one for this because it starts with a level of kind of anxiousness and anticipation, and then it builds into joy. And the opportunity here for Heinz was not, oh, Heinz gives you the opportunity to make your foods taste better. It was Heinz gives you the opportunity to reconnect with your long-lost family. And that's a much more powerful and memorable statement than them just talking about tomatoes. So there are no set rules in particular with this. So you can get kind of creative. Character, for instance, doesn't have to be a person. A character could be a place. If you work for a tourism board, for instance, the rolling mountains of Wales could be your character. Or you could have a look at kind of brand mascots. So Alexander from Compare the Meerkat, or Compare the Market. The opera man from Go Compare. They're kind of like characters that represent the brand. So you could go down that route if you wanted to. And that's also not to say that you have to stick with it either. So if you test something and it doesn't work, then put it in the bin and try something else. So think about what emotion you want to portray, the character that you want to portray, and the opportunity you as a brand have to kind of piece those two things together. And I cannot stress this enough that you need to be getting ears involved. Studies show that auditory attention is 30% more resilient than visual attention. So I'm sure some of you in the room would have heard the term second screening, where you can watch a TV, for instance, and scroll on your phone at the same time. There was a big study done by ThinkBox and Ubiquity and somebody else who I can't remember, where they actually showed that people could recite television ads or the music or the jingles while scrolling on their phones. They weren't even looking at the telly, but the auditory cues enabled them to recall that ad. So audio can be really powerful and can actually probably be one of the easiest things you can do to increase that chance of capturing and engaging attention. And then if you wanted to take it a step further, you could have a look at auditory cues. Netflix to-dum, when you load up a PlayStation. Again, Go Compare, McDonald's, any of these brands that have jingles that offer a really high rate of recall. And that's not to say that you need to go away and hire someone to write you a jingle, but it's about finding interesting ways of using audio that can help either, make your brand recognizable or to enhance that emotional reaction that we have if you listen to a piece of music and like you get goosebumps, that's an emotional reaction. So it can be really powerful. And if you're running video creative at the moment, just smash some music over the top and see whether it increases your view through rate, because it might have a really good impact without you actually having to do much legwork. So that's all well and good. You know, we've talked about TV, and you're thinking, well, how do we then implement that on a social scale? Well, it's probably not the most useful thing to say, but just forget everything that you've learned over the past kind of 5 to 10 years about paid social. We know so much about algorithms, metrics, revenue, campaign types, AI, and that's great. It's why we're all sat here. It's why we're all so great at, well, you're so great at your jobs. I don't know anything about any of those topics. But advertising worked before all of that existed, and it worked really well. Ad campaigns on TV, on radio, in out-of-home, billboards, newspapers, all worked. And it's actually why some of the brands that we know now that are household names, because they put in all of the legwork pre-digital. It was all about branding. It was all about storytelling. And I'll use a fictional example. So Chandler from Friends gets a job as an ad intern, and he does that ad campaign for those wacky trainers where, you know, an adult's trying to wear, I think they had like wheels, like wheelies. And the adult can't do it and he keeps falling over, and then a teenager blazes past and it says, "Not for adults." That's really powerful. It doesn't exist in real life, but it's a good example of where TV ad campaigns used to have these big sweeping like catchphrases, and they used to have these kind of stories that I think in social we've just lost a little bit of that edge, because we've been kind of trained by these platforms, social platforms, to only look at converting everyone at the bottom of the funnel. And we need to start buying eyeballs figuratively. It's how media buying works. So in TV advertising, media planners will pay by CPM, and the CPM will fluctuate depending on supply and demand and your placement. So, you know, a slot within the adverts of the Love Island final is going to be more expensive than like 3 o'clock on the History Channel. But you're paying for exposure. And yes, reporting and forecasting is more sophisticated now, so you can kind of forecast what your return's going to look like on TV. But back in the day, you were kind of doing it blind. You didn't know what response your ad campaign was going to have, but you would pay for 1,000 people to see it. And that was kind of good enough at the time. So when did we stop paying for eyeballs? Well, it was when like things like target ROAS and all of these other money-focused metrics came into play. And of course, that's what we want to focus on as marketers, because you're getting the door hammered down by the MD saying, "Where's my money?" And then when it comes to reporting success of those campaigns, so let's just say you've done everything I've asked you to do today, and then you're looking at your meta analytics and you're thinking, "I don't really know how to judge whether this has worked or not." Engagement metrics, in my opinion, get a really bad rep. They're labeled as vanity metrics, they're fluffy, and no one really cares about them, and that makes me really sad, because everyone's focused on ROAS, ROI, and kind of, as I say, those money metrics. But as I've said it once, I'll say it again, not everyone is immediately going to be in the market to buy your product. They might buy in 6 months' time, they might buy in a year. Industries like insurance, you only buy them once a year. So what if you serve an ad a month after someone's just taken out an insurance policy? You need to remain in the top of their mind for the next 11 months. So maybe we need to stop focusing so much on the money and start focusing on things like view through rate. That's going to show you how effective your video creative or your creative is at capturing and keeping attention. And then looking at things like click-through rate, because it shows that there is somewhat an interest in what it is that you're selling, even if they're not in the market to purchase straight away. Oh, what about my ROAS? Your ROAS will lower or plateau at best. We all know the law of diminishing returns, so it's going to happen at some point. And it's the price you have to pay, pardon the pun. It's just going to happen. ROAS works in a very short-term basis. So not everyone's going to be in the market to buy your product straight away. So what's your ROAS going to look like? Well, it's going to look pretty shit. But that's not to say that your ad campaign is ineffective. So looking at other metrics that help you measure new users, engagement, treat it like TV reporting, which back in the day, pre-C-Flight, which is the new reporting tool that Barb and 4Sales and Sky Media have built together. People used to launch e-commerce brands who were advertising on TV, used to launch a TV ad campaign, let it out into the wild, and then they used to sit in front of Google Analytics and just correlate the uplift in direct traffic, organic traffic, branded search terms, and they used to go, oh, well, that shot up, so it must be the TV ad. And that's not to say that you have to start reporting all of your campaigns like that, because I understand there is a need for those, money metrics. But there is nothing wrong with saying, we've noticed a trend that we launched this really cool story-led video campaign across Meta, TikTok, YouTube, even something like Sky AdSmart or any of those like video programmatic. And actually we've noticed that our website traffic has gone through the roof. You might have, a CMO going, well, can you trace back exactly where that traffic's come from? Probably not. But you can hazard a guess that it's come from this new campaign that you've launched. If you do have to track it all back, and if that's an absolute, your only option really is to use a more sophisticated attribution channel that is able to map that on a larger scale. So what you'll need to do is look at the effective introductory channels on purchases and conversions. So instead of looking at 7-day click or even any of those longer periods of time, don't want to be looking at anything last click. You want to be looking at first click, introductory campaigns, introductory channels, because if you take that introduction away, they might never hear of your brand ever. And then they'll never purchase. And you'll never grow as a brand. And you'll all lose your jobs. And you'll all be really sad. And AI will take over. And we'll all be made redundant. So that's all well and good kind of hypothetically. And it's, I can talk about this for hours and hours, but it's not going to help you put it into practice. So what do you need to do next? The first thing I'd suggest is actually just assessing your current strategy. And I don't mean what Meta ads have I got running currently or what TikTok ads have I got running. It's almost taking a bird's eye view of your strategy as a whole. So thinking about placement, what channels am I using? Are those channels always, am I only running Google Shopping? That's all bottom of the funnel. So it can be really tricky to introduce your brand to people who aren't in the market if that's the only channel you're using. So thinking about that, thinking about, again, campaign types. Are all my campaign types tailored for conversion? Do I have anything that is trying to get more traffic to the site? Have I got anything that's to do with engagement and engaging those eyeballs that we've paid so much money for? And then taking a look at your funnel. I'm so happy I've seen other talks today that have talked about that missing piece at the top of the funnel. It's so important. And we often find that clients or brands that we work with, they're doing a great job at the bottom and all of their bottom of funnel is really effective and their conversion rates are great. They maybe have some content going out on social that is tailored to their middle of funnel. So, UGC, reviews, anything that's going to help kind of influence that decision making as people are floating around. But there's nothing at the top here that's actually introducing the brand to new audiences. It's always kind of tailored to people that are in market. And then have a look at your creative within that. Could any of the current creative that you have, could you take it, call up ad sales and go, I want to put this on telly? I would hazard a guess that most of you are thinking, well, probably not. So this is a really good question to ask sometimes. And I'm not saying that you need to hire like a big video production agency and you need to get in touch with all of these like Hollywood directors to do like a big kind of giant scale TV ad campaign. But I often find that the best content is actually stuff that you've already shot. If you're an e-commerce brand and you're releasing like a spring summer 24 collection, you've probably done like a nice video shoot with a videographer when you've been doing your e-com shoots, and it goes up on your organic YouTube channel, or you post it organically on Instagram, and then it's just sat there to kind of fester. Sometimes that's the best content that actually works in this capacity, and you might just need to tweak it a little bit to make it more accessible or more kind of TV-like. But think about it. Think about what you're posting on your organic channels and whether or not it could work. And then if it can't, or I've been talking about video a lot, and that's because I think video is awesome. But if you don't have any video, or you don't have anything that you think would work in a TV capacity, then just get creative. Think about making something, and it doesn't need to be big budget. I don't know anything outside of Apple, unfortunately, but an iPhone 14 Max or whatever it is has the same camera as like a red camcorder thing. Like they can record in 4K basically, like it's nuts. So put a phone in someone's hand, buy a tripod, like just get creative. There's no bad ideas. There's no ideas that are too weird, because we've seen, gorillas selling chocolate. So think about those stories, those characters, those emotions, those creative themes. If you want to come up with a catchphrase, come up with a catchphrase. And I can't stress enough to get as many people kind of involved in thinking about it. So obviously speak to your marketing team. There'll be a couple of people probably in your marketing team that are just like idea engines, and they've got loads of ideas rattling around in their brain, just, desperate to get out. But I would also suggest speaking to your customer services team. They speak to the customers every day. They have hands-on relationships with all of your customers. They answer queries. They know a lot of the demographics because they speak to people all the time. So talk to them and see, we're doing this cool new creative test for social. We'd love to they probably would love the fact that you're asking them. To ask them, do you have any ideas about what our customers might like? And someone might surprise you and come up with something really fun. And then just strap in for a bit of a ROAS ride. Like I said before, it doesn't mean that you have to ignore ROAS completely, but just manage expectations, especially if you work for an agency and you're having to kind of manage stakeholders that are like jumping down your neck all the time about ROAS and ROI. It can be quite difficult to turn them around, but it is really worth doing if you can. Just keep pestering them and saying it's not all about ROAS. Look at all these lovely people on your website that's going to buy from you in 6 months. And really just try and step away from that short term, I'm going to look at ROAS every damn day. Or ROAS has been very low today. And, there might be something environmental that's happened that means that people aren't shopping today. There could be loads of other things happening within the industry or within consumer trends that means that people aren't spending as much. There's loads of stuff. So don't just take one day and think, oh my God, we need to cut our budgets because the ROAS today was shocking. Try and look slightly longer term. Try and look beyond a week. If you can do it a month, a quarter, if you can do it by a year, I would love you forever. But yeah, just about managing expectations and looking beyond money, which is probably contrary to what a lot